Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me in this prestigious Sanya Public Security Forum. My name is Ali Abdullah Wibisono. I'm from International Relations Department, Universitas Indonesia. States' responses to returning foreign fighters remain a dilemmatic and burdened process. It is burdened by the tension between efforts to protect public safety from risks emanating from returning foreign fighters and concern for the rights of persons suspected of being perpetrators of terrorism in foreign soil. Three categories of response to returning foreign fighters include ignorance, keep out, and expanded criminal justice. To ignore returning foreign fighters means to disregard their existence and to exclude them from public debate in the hope of minimizing the disruptions they might create in public sphere. To some degree, as political support for repatriating and reintegrating returning foreign fighters remains low, governments will keep public scrutiny to policy towards returning foreign fighters at minimum. Ignorance to the issue of foreign fighters returnees has also traditionally been the case among states that ignored or even exploited their citizens who went to become foreign fighters in the past. Indonesia is among those states that allowed and to some extent facilitated its citizens to depart as foreign fighters in Afghanistan during the 80s for the purpose of eroding the population of militants in the country. To some extent, China has also been noted to send their Uyghur citizens to Afghanistan to fight alongside the Mujahideens against the Soviets in the 80s. The second type of strategy is to keep the returning foreign fighters out. The keep out strategy is aimed at ensuring that foreign fighters are killed in conflict states, captured, trialed, and then executed or imprisoned for life by other governments, or to deny them re-entry by revoking their citizenship. At some point, governments' keep out strategy also materialized as operations to assassinate their citizens while traveling as foreign terrorist fighter in conflict states. Britain committed a targeted killing using drone strikes against Islamic State members. And the United States also committed a drone strike against their citizens. Revocation of citizenship remains a policy of choice in responding to returning foreign fighters for Germany, UK, Bahrain, Israel, Denmark, and Australia, while the US initially applying revocation of citizenship, but then altered its policy to repatriation since 2019. The unpopularity of repatriating or even allowing return of foreign fighters and their family members shapes the policy of these governments as they prefer to strengthen policies of preventing and countering violent extremism at home. The criminal justice response to returning foreign fighters is the most likely choice of states in responding to returning foreign fighters. The atrocities that took place in Syria and Iraq, including kidnapping, torture, murder of journalists, aid workers, atrocities against minorities, indoctrination of children with violent extremism, all of which have been conducted by ISIS, are beyond the jurisdiction of International Criminal Court. And therefore, criminal justice response to returning foreign fighters depended almost entirely on the role of nation states. Meanwhile, the criminal justice response of the states in responding to returning foreign fighters requires a broadening of the scope of activities criminalized as acts of terrorism to include participating or organizing military training, recruiting, and becoming a member of terrorist organizations, propaganda, fundraising, and facilitating terrorist activities, so that returning foreign fighters can be criminally being held accountable without having to collect and transfer evidence of foreign fighting from conflict states to the court of law at home. In Indonesia, since 2012, there has been a wave of citizens traveling to Syria. Notes from a member of the police anti-terrorism unit and the head of the Foreign Terrorist Fighters Task Force show that in 2019, there were still 639 Indonesians in Syria. Unlike the departure of Indonesian citizens to Afghanistan in the 80s and 90s, which was centralized and selective, the departure of Indonesian citizens to Syria was more of an individual or small group process with different departure agents. As a result, Indonesian citizens who became FTF or foreign terrorist fighters in Syria presented a categorization problem because some of them are not combatants. Many of them are not combatants, and there are also deportees, deported people who failed to enter Syria. No Indonesian FTF has left Syria with the aim of living in ISIS territory without previously establishing contacts and having connections with affiliated networks. It is network affiliation that has allowed them to travel and join international terrorist groups. ISIS in Indonesia is the group or affiliation of is a network affiliation that allows the departure of foreign fighters. ISIS in Indonesia emerged through the reorganization of violent jihad factions in Indonesia that the Jemaah Islamiyah network left behind after it was legally banned as a terrorist organization in 2008. Indonesia's response to returning foreign fighters are legally guided by Law Number 5, 2018, our anti-terrorism law, and Presidential Regulation Number 7, 2021, on National Plan of Action for Preventing and Countering Violent Extremism. Indonesian anti-terrorism law criminalizes foreign fighting, is difficult for the prosecutors to implement. Prosecutors need to establish strong evidence of participation of individual foreign fighter in recruitment, organization, training, and conducting acts of terrorism overseas. Other states who also have laws to criminalize foreign fighters have been more successful in implementing their anti-foreign fighters law. Australia, for example, have Foreign Fighters Act 2014, which penalizes individuals for entering or remaining in a declared area where terrorists are deemed to be engaging in hostile activities, allowing prosecutors to prove the individuals under prosecution are located in the declared area, with no solid reasons for exceptions. Indonesia's criminalization of foreign fighting also seems to fail to include failed attempts at foreign fighting, which is regulated in Australia, Canada, the US, and the UK. In the end, the government needs to open to monitoring and evaluation of rehabilitation and reintegration program. The political process of criminalization of foreign fighters in Indonesia shows a divided discourse that split its public between pro-reintegration and pro-rejection, or keep-out strategy. The result of Indonesia's political process of criminalizing the foreign fighters is a response that combines allowing the return of foreign fighters and their family, and followed by criminal prosecution and rehabilitation and reintegration. In the meantime, Indonesia is in need of international assistance in capacity building that substantively helps in providing evidence for criminal prosecution and evaluating the degree of violent extremism. Indonesian government will find it difficult to begin repatriation of all Indonesians in Syria, Afghanistan, and the Philippines without a convincing effectiveness in rehabilitation and reintegration program. I think that's all for me for now. Thank you very much for your attention.